everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am a project and event manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items with you, our code of conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link to our channel in the chat. And if you've not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speakers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Party is starting.
Is that all we got? I thought we had more.
Did I miss everybody? Anybody?
No, that's fine. I'm just kidding.
Hey, looks like it is a party. Well, thank you all so much for being here. It's great to have you again.
Well, I appreciate it. Alexia, I just want to introduce you to everyone. So we do this once a month for Microsoft Reactor, but we literally do this show every Wednesday. So a lot of people kind of follow it and listen in and know us, but they've known Rebecca helping us out for the Reactor show. But Alexia is our new helper. So say hi to everybody.
I'll just tell them hi.
Yep. Frank, didn't you have Alexia had some sort of interesting?
Yeah, let's drop her out of the graphic here. Move me up in the graphic so we can talk to you here. So all the hosts and guests that come on, I hit them up on LinkedIn, and I saw that you're Muay Thai. How do you say that, instructor? Tell us about that.
A Muay Thai, yeah, Thai boxing.
Okay. So tell us about that.
Oh, wow. Okay. It is definitely an interest in martial arts coming from Thailand, including all sorts of weapons, boxing, kickboxing, knees, elbows. Very interesting martial arts.
Well, that's pretty cool.
I've attended some live matches. I fancy myself a Muay Thai person myself, one of my favorites. In Bangkok, but we started off up in Chiang Mai first. So it was an event put on by Venom. So I got the Venom shorts, the hand wraps, everything.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
I do have my own pair of Venom shorts also.
They're nice, right? Right.
Yeah.
So we
What's
definitely.
your favorite? What's your favorite weapon?
Probably the elbow, because it's very sneaky.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So that's it. I don't know if it's sneaky or not, because you have to really pull back for that, don't you?
It's not sneaky when you do it, Rod.
Oh, I need to work on that, I guess.
It's sneaky because you can lead with it and then go with a leg kick, a leg strike, right? When someone rears back, because now you got them back. Oh yeah.
Wow, looks like you have some pros here.
Well, the other thing that I found out that was interesting about one of our hosts is Rod Trent, his pets. I did not realize the pets that he has. So Rod, what's the deal with that?
My pets? My entire life, I have always kept tarantulas. I don't think there's been a time in my life when I've not had one. And I have one now, but I guess it freaked everybody out. But she molted recently. Here's her most recent molt, right? So yeah, pretty good. She's a lot bigger, more colorful, more vibrant right now. So yeah, I keep tarantulas. They're like the perfect pet. A dog gets you up in the middle of the night, wants you to take them outside to go potty. The cats, they just stink up the place because they go potty everywhere. Spiders.
But I heard the perfect pet is a rat, from what I heard.
Perfect pet is a rat.
Yeah, research it. You would be surprised.
Because they're used for research? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying research it. People love having rats as pets. So I found that out on a conversation on a flight.
Well, spiders eat rats.
You had an interesting week last week. Speaker 25 strikes again.
Where was I last week? Oh yeah, I was I was at the mothership. I was on campus all week last week, which was kind of interesting. At a on-premises based kind of conference tech mentor. So that was
Wait a minute. I get to dig. You guys are always digging on me about my misuse of the English language.
Thank you. Do it.
On premises. On premises. On premises. Had that been me, Brodie would have been all over me.
Didn't I say on premises, or did I?
You did.
Brodie, when I went to get the list, right?
Yeah. So I had a good time last week. It was enjoyable.
Did you speak or just attend?
I spoke, yeah. So I talked about Microsoft Sentinel a couple times. Once about the day in the life of Microsoft Sentinel analyst, and the second one was about how to use Microsoft Sentinel as in Microsoft Teams as an actual war room. So
very cool.
That was the first time I've done that one, and it was well received enough so that I'm going to build it out and make it kind of an official session for somebody. So
I see there were graphics challenged again. So how about you, Edward?
Actually a good week. I got to help a customer resolve some log ingestion issues with Checkpoint FW1, whatever it is.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot this week. I hope some people got to listen to our discussion about that last week, especially.
Well, that discussion was around our syslog because McAfee EPO does it. This one I learned that if you have the firewall management consoles and high availability pairs, you have to run the log export against both of them, or you will miss because those things load balance real time of management. So they were seeing gaps in the log, like we're missing whole firewalls, but you have to run a particular set of scripts to export the logs / events. And it was a good learning experience. I hadn't been in a Checkpoint device in a long time. I forgot. I cut my teeth. My first firewall, corporate firewall device was a long time. I forgot. Yeah, Checkpoint on the blue Nokia boxes running BSD. Yeah, the old unit's about that big. It was good. I really hadn't gotten in a firewall in a while. You could. I like the checkpoints because they are chatty, but you have huge amounts of granularity about what you want to bring in beyond just facilities alerts and stuff like that. So we got that, and then I figured out how to do it from. They have physical checkpoint boxes in their data center, and they have virtual checkpoint workloads in Azure. And so you have to go in and get all that stuff. Boxes in their data center, and they have virtual checkpoint workloads in Azure.
We got an echo in here. Somebody, who's the echo?
Somebody turn on YouTube, and it's not me.
For once,
yeah.
Right.
For once, it's not me.
Rod's hiding behind the graphics, so we know it's him.
Oh, yeah. Am I? Oh, yeah.
Learn that. Still battling a couple of the log things, but man, the last workload for the month has had me just in Linux, right? Right? House is good. Weather is good. The high today was 80. Can you believe that in Georgia, the high was 80 today? So it's cool. Back running again. And
I was expecting to see you finishing the Ironman competition with John Seville there, or Saville, or however you say his last name. I didn't see you there at the Ironman competition with him.
No, absolutely not.
That was the Alaska event too, man. I can't imagine that would be just crazy.
Yeah, that is a dedication and a lifestyle. I've completed one triathlon in my life, never again. And oddly enough, the hardest part was the cycle piece. I still swim well from ex-Navy. The run was no issue. When I tell you, sitting in that saddle, man, riding, you can't. Yeah, it hurts afterwards, right?
Right,
so.
Before I get
into I have something to complain about. Let's check in with Brodie.
Brodie.
Speaking of complaints,
complain with me. Hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. This week's been fun. I've been getting set up with a few banks. Going to be doing some security and compliance. A couple of our customers. And if you were listening over the last few weeks, I joined a customer who wanted us to kind of parachute in and work on some Sentinel. And I just dropped the inkling that I'd worked on insider risk management before when we were going through what connectors they had set up or not. And now it's a full-blown insider risk implementation that we're also going to link into Sentinel. So that's fun. That's good times. Keep them busy. And got back from a wedding this weekend, and that was great. I was in British
And how'd the
Columbia.
music turn out?
Music turned out awesome. Yeah, everything was
good.
awesome. Still hooking everything back up here.
Who'd you pay to do the playlist? I mean,
nobody. I spent plenty of my own hours doing it myself, and then I had a friend who I hadn't seen in years, and he also hasn't DJ'd in like 5 years, and so we hyped each other up, and then we got through it. It was good. I better than got through it. We did a great job. So
yeah, I actually I texted you guys on Sunday. I was it Saturday? Just watching Canadian American football,
right.
And watched Calgary beat up on British Columbia. I actually tracked the game. The game is good. I like
Great
it.
game.
Yeah, the way they played it. I love the receivers being able to have motion toward the line of scrimmage.
Oh, it's so much fun.
They babysit our DBs in the NFL. You know.
Yeah.
I take that back. I take that back. The DBs in the NFL actually have a harder time because they really make sure that the receivers can catch the ball.
Yes, exactly. They give them more room. Yeah.
So wouldn't relish that. That's why they get paid so much.
Is the ball really pink? No, I guess not. Sorry, that was a meme. Sorry, I was just trying to look up Canadian football.
But
they might have pink ball during breast cancer awareness month.
Yeah, they sure have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they usually do all that stuff too.
All right, are you ready for my complaint yet? Since I rarely ever complain about anything.
Frank, we'd love to hear your complaint. Please.
Bated breath, please.
Yeah.
I went to a DFIR summit this week. The beginning was talking about log collection in the cloud. And when they went to the Azure stuff and the Microsoft 365 stuff, well, mainly Azure, they showed every single SIM out there in the slide except for Sentinel. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. And I really felt that the DFIR side right now of cloud, digital forensics, incident response, they're very focused on thinking, okay, you used to have the SharePoint server in here, you used to have the Exchange server here, now it's moved to the cloud, and now we're going to do DFIR the same way that we used to, and not take advantage of anything that Azure and M365 give you in dealing with security and incident response. It was really disappointing. I don't know if anyone's seen that out there.
So I've seen something similar. So a couple of my colleagues on my team, Sarah and Jolene, were at DEF CON and Black Hat and stuff last week. I feel a little jealous. They were in Vegas. I was in Redmond. But anyway, that was one of the things that they brought out very specifically, not necessarily the Sentinel piece, but Azure in general, right? So you go to these hackathons and Black Hat and DEF CON, and they pretty much just across the board talk about AWS, a little bit of GCP potentially, but very little Azure. I mean, there is a little bit, but not on that range.
I like to give my opinionated fact on this. It is because the Microsoft offering is almost as complete as you can have, right? And there's not much business. You could theoretically run all of your security for the most part using the cloud capabilities, security capabilities. Sentinel M365 is no slouch when it comes to security. So there's no money to be made. There's money to be made in the integrations because, quite frankly, AWS and Google can't stand up. They're not ready, right? Google may be closer than AWS, I believe, if they can ever reboot Chronicle or whatever they call it. But they talk about it because they in their mind, they are providing an agnostic solution for you to bring in the security workloads that you previously were familiar with. And so those conversations tend not to be displacive, but augmentative. And unfortunately, Microsoft's conversation around introduction of their security products is often, we're going to replace everything you have with ours, right? That's not a fair assumption.
But still, we're gonna get to you in a second, Joe. But still, to send everything out of Azure, so you can have it in your old way of doing things and lose everything from the purpose-driven UI and everything else that's there, it doesn't make sense. All right, Joe, go ahead.
I see it as a just coming from a DFIR forensic consulting type of background, when I see this, I don't think of it financially, because a lot of the log export that we would do would be in free or near free type of solutions. And when I think of it in terms of IR capability, a lot of times I think of the tie-in and the integration that Microsoft has that makes it so close to the IT infrastructure. And I see that as being a scary thing to a lot of people who are responding to incidents, because they're going to have some qualm over the potential security of the logs after they're ingested there, if they suspect that it is a compromised domain, or they're in a mid-compromised scenario where they are unsure of, of how things are going in terms of like privileged accounts, or if they're unsure of the degree of compromise and they're still in that sort of discovery phase. Perhaps they're just looking to abstract the log analysis from anything related to the software that could be compromised.
So what you're saying is they believe it's easier to cover your tracks because the security operations and the day-to-day IT operations are so integrated. You run on the same platform that you're using. And so someone can get to one aspect of it, they can essentially walk backwards and sweep their footprints of a sort.
If I walk into an environment and I'm not sure if it's compromised, if I don't know someone has DA already, and I spin up a Sentinel instance, that's going to tip them off. They might already know that it's there if they're inside of this customer's Azure environment. They're going to have access to see exactly what I'm monitoring, what types of queries I'm saving and running. So it just, to me, it would stand to reason that, like, okay, any sort of RBAC, I want to be completely abstracted from whatever directory system that I believe to be suspect. And so it's the lack of the Microsoft integration that makes it palatable for the responder who is suspect of the fact that they believe that this particular Microsoft environment could be compromised.
Yeah, there's so many variables. The skill level of the intruder,
for sure.
Right? How long they've been in there to recon, to maybe put some false breadcrumbs out there to have you look the other way while they're doing something else. So there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, but why not even talk about Sentinel?
Because they don't have the skills.
Well,
they talk about Splunk, they talk about QRadar. They had every single one on the screen except for Sentinel. I'm like, why is this so anti-Sentinel?
So I'll tell you why. I don't think it's anti-Sentinel. I think it's just pro-Gartner, right? So when this comes out here in the next couple months, something like this, you're going to see quite a significant change, because last year Splunk was still, in that leader spot, Magic Quadrant. This year will be much different.
All right, Rod. So tell me, all of the intel that goes into the fusion rules that are out there and the constant build out of that and improvement of that, do you get that in other SIMs, a similar thing?
You can. It's not going to be our intelligence, or at least the breadth of our intelligence. You could use something like Red Canary and, enrich that. Sorry, I was trying to bring them into conversation. But so we even announced a couple weeks ago, the new threat intelligence stuff. All of these trillions of signals that we consume every day from our customers consuming our products, and then consolidating that stuff, that's fed back into the system. That's probably, when you consider that Office 365, things like that, are probably the most widely used services in the world, and the intelligence that's built because of using those products, that's probably the best intelligence source out there anywhere, to be honest. And I'm not just saying that because, I'm a Microsoft person. I'm supposed to say that. I just think it's actually really cool because you're where the customers are. That intelligence signals are being built.
So, Frank, let me ask you a question. You did say they talked about GCP and AWS, right?
Right.
But no Azure.
No, they talked about Azure, but they didn't bring up Sentinel.
It was like they sneezed Azure or something like that.
No. They talked about Azure. They talked about the 3 different clouds, but Sentinel as a SIM solution for Azure is not considered.
Yeah.
So, which I found.
In the old school, they're a bunch of haters, so they'll be all right.
It really came across to me that they were on-prem people, thinking like on-prem people, dealing with deeper in the cloud, and that's what was confusing to me. All right, Rod, do you have any complaints before we get on with our guests?
I don't have a complaint. I do have something I like to note. Something that Frank and I have been working on, which ironically, I was also working on this internally as well. We have two clients, Azure Monitor Agent and the MMA, Microsoft Management Agent. And MMA will go away in August of 2024.
So these are the data connectors you install on Windows devices to send
to
logs
collect
to Sentinel.
Windows event logs and what have you. The earlier agent will deprecate in 2024. We have 2 years. I think at Microsoft, we kind of do a poor job when we announce new features. We're like, hey, we're getting closer to feature parity. This feature is in public preview. Wow, everybody needs to migrate. We ran into a situation today where there's still some things that aren't supported that are probably pretty necessary for a lot of customers. So you really have to kind of take a very systematic approach to
And the problem is their docs actually say it's supported, but it's not.
It doesn't actually say that SysMon is supported. It says that security events and performance data is supported. It doesn't say anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right. So because if you think about how you create an XPath, the SysMon is under what? SysMon operational Microsoft, and then Windows, SysMon operational something, and then system, and then there you can choose the event IDs you want to pick out, right?
I'm gonna disagree with you on this one.
Ooh.
All right. So one second, I gotta find the screen that you're on.
Frank's pulling out his elbow. Watch out.
Oh, he's got the elbow.
Got to put the link on there. So take a look at this link. You can bring it up on your screen.
That shows there's an absolutely disconnect from the people that write to the people that do. There you go. It's retired on August 34. Yeah, knew that.
So
Well, they have
scroll
a gap.
down. So look at SysMon in that article.
Well, they have a gap analysis between agent section. All right, so recommended migration path. Yeah, and then the workbook.
Take a look at the Windows logs.
Right.
And the gap analysis under SysMon, they say collection only, and it says it's supported.
Collection only collection. Is that not true?
So we need to go a different route with that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So yeah, the thing that I pulled up earlier, in fact, based on some docs that we have for Microsoft Sentinel for the Windows security events via AMA connector, it says that the XPath queries prefix, the only thing that's supported is security ! Right? Which means everything under that security log file.
So with the new agent, we have not found a way to actually get SysMon logs into Sentinel, okay? Even though it says that it's actually supported. Now, when you look at the new agent for Windows, you don't do the normal checkboxes that you used to. You use something called a data collection rules.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, you could do a custom XPath query to actually pull in the location of the SysMon logs, but that's not working. So in SC200, we still talk about SysMon in the Learn material dealing with the old connector. There's a spot there waiting for the new connector. Once something is published and verified by Microsoft that it can be done. Now, I had to change the labs to actually knock out the SysMon part because we are using the new connector in the labs because of this. So I'm waiting for something official from Microsoft other than a page that says it's supported, but no way of, and not telling us how it's supported or how to configure, because the old way of configuring does not work with the new connector.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Frank on this too. So the reason is, and I know it's a rarity to our listeners, if you are looking at this page and I'm at the very bottom where it says the AMA doesn't have the feature sets my Microsoft Sentinel deployment needs to work, should I migrate yet? And they give you the company line here. But right across from it, you'll see connection instructions by type, and then AMA migration for Microsoft Sentinel. And then I think that's the one I clicked on. Ooh, I'm sorry, wrong one. Oh, syslog raw sources. You're right. It leads you to think that it is supported because it talks about it. But when you get down to the architecture section, it goes back to log analytics agent and not MMA. So you got conflicting docs out here.
You mean Sysmon, but the bottom line is they have more information about Sysmon under Linux and getting that information than they actually have about Sysmon for Windows and getting that information sent in a Sentinel. Kind of strange, but that's what we're dealing with today. And so when we're having our guests on tonight, I was thinking about the changes I made, because we utilize, obviously, as attack and detections and teaching people that with inside SC 200 for the Atomic Red Team stuff, which now becomes an issue because, well, not only can you not collect Sysmon, I actually like to show students that what's collected in MDE, Defender for Endpoint, versus what's collected in Sysmon and the detections there. And now with the new agent not really supporting Sysmon until we figure out how to do it for Windows, that had to be pulled out, and also impact maybe what some of the other testing that's done out there for people, the atomic testing.
Well, you got to look at the other thing. Who in their right mind is just running Sysmon all over the place, right? And noisy and chatty, right?
A lot of people.
I know a lot of people.
I'm still annoyed with MDE because it's still adding additional spaces in command lines that it's actually capturing, which I don't understand why it's still doing that after all, 2 years or whatever. It should not be adding in the additional spaces.
You're right. We reported this 2 years ago to the powers that be, and they blew us off. So that's okay though. But hey, sounds like everybody actually did work this week, and we got some good guests, returning guests, friends of the show. So we got Joe and Cardell from Red Canary, and I guess they are going to represent the Atomic Red Team too. The line of delineation I can't really get, but hey, I'm a Red Canary fan, right? You see, I got the shirt, Ed Walton, and I'm also a Red Canary security angel. See my halo come on? There you go, right?
That's great.
So Joe, thanks for coming back. Cardell, thank you for coming back. This is your first time on the Reactor show. We want you guys to come in and share some of the goodness that is Red Canary. And thank you guys for the support. It's not bilateral. I hope you guys talk about us, because a lot of people have approached us to talk about how great your product is. But scratch my back, scratch yours. You gotta have a scratcher.
I was just looking. Red Canary recognized as a Microsoft Security Excellence Award winner for being a security trailblazer. So congrats, Red Canary.
Look at that.
There you go.
Wonders ever cease. So Joe, Cardell, the floor is yours. Thanks for coming on, man.
Blazing trails with you guys. That's right.
You probably need to do a brief introduction to each one of you, because you're going to be new to some individuals who are not familiar. So I'll let you guys go ahead and do it. I'm going to go on mute.
Sounds great. Well, thanks for having us again, guys. I know we've done a couple of these. This is the first time on Reactor. The way let's just clear it up real quick to start with Atomic Red Team and Red Canary. So Atomic Red Team is our open source project, separate, 100% separate from us. We obviously support it. We contribute to it. We have a community team that is part of it. But now the top maintainers of that project are no longer Canaries. So they are folks out in the public that are contributing to it. So that's been fun to see that take off. As you guys know, it's integrated actually into Defender as well. But that is an open source framework that anyone can download and use. So that's kind of delineation. We kicked it off. And kind of handed it over to that open source crew. We stay behind the scenes and help it stay alive and support it that way. So that's the difference. Red Canary obviously is the MDR company. I'll do a quick intro myself and let Joe jump in as well. So Red Canary started out 7 years ago, before MDR was a term. We basically looked at the pile of data that customers had, and that was kind of overwhelming, and burying them basically, and trying to find threats and teams that could dig through that, and said someone needs to help fix this problem. So we're a software company that ingests I think petabytes now of raw data per day for our customers, and we plug right into the Microsoft ecosystem and pull all of that raw telemetry from Defender for Endpoint, and now we'll talk about today the expanded workloads that we support around identity, email, M365, and the like. So we'll cover more of that. But that's the software component, and then we deliver that service and the value to our customers through people, right? And so all of that data comes in, all of the alerts that we ingest from all of the Microsoft workloads get sorted out internally here on the back end. We have a 24/7 team that is watching everything that's going on with the customers' security products and make sense of it. We investigate it, and then we deliver it out to a customer as kind of a nicely packaged timeline with the detection and all of the information around it. So that's what we do. We'll show you more of that today. I'm Cordell Bonhoffman. I'm the GM of our Microsoft Security Partnership, and we've now been, I think, three years with you guys. So we started, Microsoft reached out to us actually to partner before there was EDR. The sensor and the Defender EDR component was part of the Defender agent. It was just AV back 3.5, 4 plus years ago. So we've worked with your teams since then. The ILDC crew over in Israel and a lot of the PM and engineering teams we still meet with on a regular basis to work through that. We were the first kind of the inaugural MDR partner, ingesting that data stream, the telemetry feed from Defender for Endpoint, and now additional workloads as well. So that's my role. I kind of oversee I don't think there's a department at Red Canary that doesn't work with or isn't impacted in some way by Microsoft, all the way from accounting and invoicing and customer support to obviously sales and the like. So excited to be on the show again, and great momentum to share around additional integrations that we'll talk about here in just a moment. So Joe, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I'm a product specialist with Red Canary, and uniquely, we have Microsoft product specialists, and Microsoft is the only vendor that we have product specialists for, and we have 2 of them. And so I work with Cordell on Microsoft strategy here, and really, when people who are outside the company ask me what product specialist means, I kind of tell them we're like cloud security architects ish. We do a lot of internal enablement. We do configuration guides, which you could think of as like sort of like reference architecture, but it's more like just like recommendations based on M365, or Azure settings, things that our customers can do that we consider to be best practice, especially as they integrate with our service. So I do a lot of sales enablement, a lot of internal tech support, escalation support for our Microsoft-based deployments, and really serve as kind of a centralized point of contact for Microsoft strategy initiatives internally, doing research, testing, and evaluation of new tools, integrations with Red Canary.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Appreciate it. So we've got a couple different items on the agenda here. We can follow your lead, what you think is best. One idea or one agenda item here is that we could start with a demo and just kind of show you what a Red Canary timeline looks like, right? Get in the weeds there. And then we can spend a little bit of time talking about kind of pulling back the covers a little bit on the integrations themselves, how they work, and then what's coming. So if that sounds good, I see Brodie shaking his head so far. Yeah,
I love demos. We love demos here, and so do our viewers. Yeah,
awesome.
And just my vote. I'll let the other Brady Bunch squares chime in with thumbs up from Boaz.
I thought it was Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares. Yeah, there you go.
I thought he was going to say, "I'm going to let the rest of the Brodie Bunch," right? But
Brodie. The Brodie Bunch. That's great. Okay, let's see if the screen share works. It's the first time.
We just renamed the podcast.
That's my hidden secret side project. I want to tell you guys about it.
Brodie Bunch.
Can I share the screen of us sharing the screen? Yeah. Okay, working. Yep. Okay. Well, let's do this briefly. Just picture is worth 1,000 words here. So you can see as we look at the timeline, Microsoft and Red Canary have a very, very, actually, we've got a slide. I captured it in a slide because our missions are tied so closely together, and this isn't reworded at all. I took it from our site and Microsoft site, so very closely aligned. And we're Microsoft overall obviously has much bigger products, offerings, and tools, tool sets out there. We're focused, in on the cyber attack part as a company. Microsoft Security is as well. So that alignment is really what led Microsoft to reach out to us. And then over the last 4-ish years, you can see we do the IP co-sell motion with Microsoft. So if there are any folks out there wondering, or even some of the Microsoft sales teams and technical folks that we are IP co-sell certified, as well as as customers, that helps because you get a benefit to reduce your MAC if you've got a Microsoft Azure commitment. Our joint revenue, the dollars that go towards Red Canary help you knock down the MAC. And then, of course, additional workloads that have been added. And one of the cool things we like to talk about, it was really cool to be a part of, is on a quarterly basis, I believe it is, Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, and the senior leadership team have about a 30-minute to an hour slot where they do what's called an outside-in session, and they bring in usually customers to talk directly to that crew. And we were invited as a security partner to come in and speak to that team. So super cool to be a part of. Satya is very engaging, our CEO, and he had some great discussion. But I think it's just one of those that kind of the notches in the belt along the timeline, right? To be a part of that and to be asked to join you guys up in Redmond was just a fun experience overall, and an honor to be a part of and representing what we're doing as a partner in the field. So wanted to just share that. So as we jump into what Red Canary does, the kind of where the rubber meets the road, as I like to call it, this is the Red Canary portal. This is the dashboard. You can see here, if we go home, everything that we pull in from Microsoft's tooling, and we also support others out there, right? There are other vendors in the world in some cases. So if you've got Okta, great, we can plug it right in. You don't have to switch. If you've got Okta and you're looking to move to the AD solution, great, we can help you transition that over, and we can kind of provide the stopgap or the coverage across both of those. So that's one of the beauties of the Red Canary platform, is that we do have broad coverage of other tools as you may be migrating to, if you were an E3 or an E5 customer, for example, that's working on deploying different workloads. Defender for Endpoint is usually one of the first. We can jump in and begin supporting that as you add additional components. But what you see here are the things that we've gleaned and detected from the Microsoft ecosystem. So in this case, you can see this is our demo environment, so it's not super exciting as far as the volume of data. But over the last 90 days, you can see like what we've done for you as a customer. So we actually have a team that's investigating the threats that come out of it. We see all the alerts that come out of the Microsoft platforms, and then with Defender for Endpoint specifically, we see about a 4x increase in the detections that come out of Defender, because we have our own teams that are hands-on investigating these things and digging through the telemetry. As you heard mentioned earlier, whether it's Azure, Sentinel, different components that are storing all of this data, we're watching that real-time feed, right? So these are the threats, the types of threats that we're watching come through, that we're seeing in your environment. You can see here the number of servers, desktops, laptops, the endpoints themselves, the alerts, etc. And then you can see as we are updating our engine, adding different coverage detectors and things like that. But if we move to the actual detection, the cool part about this is that we are stitching together multiple Microsoft workloads in ways that some of the Microsoft tools still are not able to do, right? So we're pulling in all of the email information, and you'll see in just a moment, we can stitch that together with the same an identity threat coming out of the Graph API, along with an endpoint threat coming out of the Endpoint API. So you guys are making great progress on that front. Sentinel does a lot of that with their incident idea, the concept of an incident, and stitching that together as well. And so what Red Canary kind of brings to the table, and if you will, as a managed detection and response partner. We have people that are looking at this and actually stitching this together, and we have eyes on all of these actually by a detection engineer and then a second detection engineer before they ever go out to a customer. So it's confirmed. We know it's a threat. The noise is dramatically reduced, right? False positives and the like are filtered out, and so this is what you get. And so when you scroll through it, you can see already at the top what workstation or what endpoint was affected, the identity that was used there as well, and one of the things that we hear customers ask us, whatever you do, don't change this. You can improve it, modify it, but don't get rid of this idea of a timeline. And that is that we stitch together all of these different components. Some of them are part of the back end intelligence that the engine brings, and then the rest of it is finalized by our analysts that are jumping in here and providing notes to our customers. So you can see the actual threat started up here in Azure AD, right? So we saw a high severity alert that was, we pulled it out of the Graph API tied to AD. That was also connected to activity shortly after in the email side of things, right? We saw an email forwarding rule being added. And if you continue to scroll down here, you can see Defender. It's the data source is still labeled ATP, even though it's Defender for endpoint. But you can see it actually, there was some malware that was blocked as well. So they're doing different things in this environment to try to explore some lateral movement, to try to see what else they've got access to once they get in. And then of course you can see here, these are the blue line. These are the notes from our analysts that are helping the customer understand what's going on here, why this is concerning, and why you as a customer should be paying attention to this this alert over all the rest of them out there. So I'll take a pause there. I know we probably got questions and interest.
How many analysts are on the team, Cordell and Joe?
That is a great question. I don't know the exact count. I know it's I believe it's over 100 now, but it's probably many more. I'm not sure.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yep. So
I love the timeline view. It reminds me, since I work at Microsoft, it reminds me similarly of the timeline views we have in the XDR platform and across our solutions as well. You got to be able to see event after event and the full picture, right, to really help customers understand what's happening.
So Microsoft has like the Graph API. Yeah. Defender for Endpoint has an API. Everyone has an API. Everything was supposed to go through Microsoft Graph, but I don't see that happening. So are you stitching together all this information from all of the different APIs to make this happen? Because Microsoft has never standardized on just using the Graph API.
Yes.
Very astute question. Yes. So the answer is yes. I'll take a step back, and I love talking about this as well. And I was actually out in Redmond working with the folks on the V2 Graph API team. But we do pull from both and dedupe. I'll let Joe talk about that a little more though.
Yeah, so we have a couple sources that we pull from for this data. Cordell mentioned earlier, we have the streaming API. So specifically for Defender for Endpoint, we're leveraging the streaming API to grab that information. Graph V2 is a big source, but then we're also just leveraging the Defender for Endpoint API. And then, oh man, there's the for Office, we have the management API. There's quite a few. I would say, like for the detection sources that we support right now through Graph, which is Defender for Endpoint, Identity, MCAS, Office 365 with a focus on Exchange Online, and Azure Azure AD Identity Protection. For those sources, we are using Graph V2, but there's probably like at least 4 more APIs besides Graph, I would say, that we're using as well. So it gets,
we want one portal to rule them all. We want one API to rule them all, but still not there yet on either one.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen.
That's part of the idea here is the customer. We work with the customer to help tie in all the data sources, right? Graph V2, once that goes we'll probably do some of the support of it with public GA or public preview, and then fully when it flips over to GA. That will consolidate big chunks of this and provide actually a lot more of the data behind the scenes, right? To give customers and partners access to what's behind the scenes, but that still will not be the be all end all. And so what Red Canary really strives to do is kind of be the single point for a customer to stitch it all up, right, and bring it all together into one source. As we know, there's the single pane of glass is really kind of a non-existent thing. I'm not sure it ever will be, right? You do need different tools for different purposes, but then I like to call it the stitching together, right, of this threat, because an attacker, as we all know, isn't looking through the lens of licenses and products and permissions and all that stuff. They're just blasting away trying to do what they can, right? And so we're trying to figure out as closely as we can behind them to what's happening and what they're doing, and then helping a customer understand that without needing to worry about any of the sources, honestly, if they don't want to look at that. So
let me jump in here and ask Edward a question, because this, not that I want to complain about something else tonight, but one of the things that's driven me crazy about partners is that they think because they do identity, they do this level of security, right? And so how many times have you seen identity partners go in and say, hey, I can do this type of work, or what we're looking at here at Red Canary is what customers should be looking to for a partner. It's just driven me crazy that they think since they can, put Office, out there, that and they can do identity, Azure Active Directory, that they understand security. Now this is understanding security. So am I right about my complaint about partners, or are you going to take the fifth or drink a fifth on that?
No, Ed takes a side, right or wrong. I agree with you. I've called out partners that have been verified, co-sale ready, but when you go look at the product, it's nothing. I can put my own audit logs. So that is still problematic with partners who are, portraying themselves as security practitioners, but what they did was they found them. It's like the old days. The network guy was the security guy. So now they're thinking the identity person is some sort of security. He's part of the team. But you'll find that a lot of the large organizations, the person that's in charge of IAM, identity access management, are not even part of the security team, especially in cloud environments. So the security team has to go work with the identity team to be able to get this done. You're going to have that.
Well, it's because the way that we met, right? Because back then they had the partner that had to have the 3 areas of specialty, and none of them had security, in my opinion, from what I saw.
Well, that's the reason it was coming through my workshop. We were vetting them, and I had a 80% failure rate. That's, to me, that's a badge of honor, because the pretenders didn't last; they withered. And the ones that decide, hey, we're going to invest in creating a viable security offering, with Microsoft security products is one of the staples or cornerstones, they do well. But a lot of them, they couldn't stomach. They didn't know how to monetize it. Was the biggest thing.
And they go and they say, we're going to do this service or whatever. And I just think it's a completely useless thing, where when you take a look at something that like Red Canary has here and what they're providing, there's value there compared to what I've seen other partners providing in the world of security.
Well, time will vet out the pretenders, and Red Canary is, one of the top tiers, and now everybody's going to be that. And you want everybody to come in, Frank. If they say they're expert, they need to be an expert. Well, we know, they're selling it first and figuring it out later. So, to our listener, Frank does bring up a very valid point. You need to vet your security partners well to understand. And if Frank has taught me more about timeline analysis than I've ever knew, since I've known him 3 years now, a little bit more. I have to confess, timeline analysis was not super important to me, because I wasn't taught that. I was taught a very specific way on a very specific set of skills, and Frank had pulled my butt out of fire twice when I saw a customer and was like, oh man, we need to get this over to dark, right? There's something's going on. So let the pretenders do what they do. You know, Red Canary is going to eventually get them all in the ring and take them out anyway. We'll see what happens.
You know, I think like just as a comment to that as well, it's easy with the fidelity of data that Microsoft is providing. I think when you look at identity, when you look at the role that something like email and something like privileged accounts play in modern day attacks, I think it's easy for vendors to try to look good when in fact they're kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? It's easy for them to take the hard work and the excellence that Microsoft has created in email security, in identity protection, and to try to piggyback on that. But there's just a lot more to attacks than that, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's what it ultimately comes down to, is having the fidelity that we do provides that a significant amount of extra value. And we are very endpoint focused still. Like we have a lot of coverage, obviously, through the workloads. Like even in this particular attack timeline, you know, we're seeing email, we're seeing identity, but we're also seeing the endpoint here. And I designed this kind of like this demo to, and it might help to like talk to a little bit of the storyboard around it, but it's pretty obvious if you look at the alerts what's happening here. But you know, it just to kind of bring that back around, I do think that with a lot of modern attacks, it's easy to piggyback off of critical accounts, email, and hard focus on that. Just like, you know, 15 years ago, we used to hard focus on endpoint because that's where the malware came from, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think it's a great point, Joe. And one of the slides we use kind of captures that. And I think you let's see who made it. Was it Edward? Frank made the initial comment, right? That if you look at the way Microsoft has structured their APIs, what we fight quite often actually is almost a glut of vendors out there that are claiming by ingesting just even the alert itself and pulling it in and kind of resorting it and then passing it back to the customer, that, you know, we've prioritized it, we looked at it, and we know this thing is bad, so now customer go investigate it, right? That's it's kind of the icing on the cake, right? For us, that's the end of the story, right? If you look here on the far left, the raw telemetry and alerts coming out of your tooling is no small task, right? It's a massive amount of data, and especially as the organizations get larger, you know, we have a number of joint customers at the, you know, small to medium, but also the kind of the enterprise layer. We're looking at all of the telemetry from Defender for Endpoint is kind of that core that goes deep, right? Because that's a good 70-80% ish of the alerts of the threats out there. And then we layer in the rest of these, and some of them don't have some of the tooling that is around, like call it identity or even cloud. You know, the telemetry isn't as deep. The raw logs and things like that around an identity source, for example, can be somewhat much lighter in some cases. So you throw all that into the same pile, and everything on the screen here from a Red Canary perspective in black is software, right? It's the engine. It's running through all of our detection. Our detectors, it's ingesting the data, it's looking at Microsoft's alerts as well and kind of surfacing those. And so as it builds that correlation, the event timeline is really what makes the threat come alive too for our threat analysts. And so you're asking about the people and the team that does it. All the little red canaries behind this little red first circle here are called detection engineers. And so they are taking all of that data that's been ingested, correlated, and kind of presented to them as a series of events that are happening in a customer's environment. They're the ones that are digging in and investigating. And the way that we can investigate, the reason we can actually investigate, is because we have all this raw telemetry, right? Most of those other kind of icing on the cake partners, there's nothing else to go investigate. They've got the alert and they've told you, you know, what they think is the higher priority, and then they give it back, right? So
that was my point about some of those partners that were just sending back what you already knew.
Yep.
So
well, they're going to ride that. They're going to ride that wave, right? Because the API ingestion, the data, however you get the data in, they're good at that. but customers don't really go in and say, okay, you have all of this. What are you going to do with it? If I had a vetting question, it wasn't so much that you took detections, you had IOCs, you had alerts, you look at it, you say you may have something, and you call the customer. I would ask security partners, what is your proactive stance on the data that you have? Right? Is it just sitting there and you waiting for something to happen, or are you being proactive in doing that? Especially teams that don't have a purple team or a red team, whatever gray team that they're doing. That's the differentiator. What are you doing with it at rest if it's not a detection for it? You think that's valid, Franklin?
I was distracted by a comment coming in, so
Yeah,
sorry.
but it really goes back to customers. Ask your security provider, what are you doing with it?
So let me ask you this. So now we have a high fidelity alert incident, right? Do you guys provide any sort of further deep forensics analysis of what take place, or are you just sending back the really qualified alert and incident?
Joe, you want to jump in there?
Yeah. So, it's we definitely are. It's not just a regurgitation of the alert. Let's put it that way at first.
No, I mean, you're doing a lot more, and you're probably doing it faster than some of the things that have to be vetted. But now you actually have identified forensic something.
When you say forensic, it threw me off a little bit, because by policy, we don't, like, for example, with our standard level of service, we don't actually like interact with the endpoints at all. We do have more advanced tiers of service where we will assist customers with incident response efforts in real time, like active remediation, where we'll actually hop on and terminate. And we give customers the capability of responding in real time using Automate as well. So if they want to build playbooks to trigger some actions across the Microsoft XDR stack, they can do that within Red Canary. So it's multifold, but yeah, it's the investigation effort. One of the things that I actually really like, because I come from a security operations background, and we used to have dedicated in the past at places where I've worked before, different clients would have dedicated analysts, and I used to think, oh, that's cool, because they get to learn the different, like, the IP ranges or whatever, like, oh, this is the proxy, so it makes sense that this traffic is coming from this or whatever. But I think that there's a certain type of that filtering it in your mind as opposed to using technology the right way to present the information and only keep the relevant information is kind of it's kind of bad practice. And I'm glad to see one of the things here when I first came, when I onboarded with Red Canary, I got a huge tour, and I don't know if they still do this, but when I joined, we were like probably half the size that we are now, and they actually had me sit with our detection engineering team, and you basically have to be a detection engineer for like a week. And it was totally eye-opening. And I love that these alerts are not served to our detection engineers in any particular order or fashion. Like, no matter what customer gets it, no matter what technology it is, it's going through and it's being standardized in such a way that, you could have a non-Microsoft alert from a certain customer, and then next thing you know, it's a Microsoft specific detection from a different customer, and all of it is using the detection logic that we've created and maintained internally. And so the data fidelity has to kind of keep up with that.
So your detection engineers are more focused on detections on tactics and techniques than specific, the known threat intel, like IP addresses or file hashes and so on. Now, obviously, you can then apply those detections for the tactics and techniques across the board. But when you do get some sort of IP address or file hash, do you do anything going back across old data for the customer? And do you share that indicator not to a virus total, but internally, so other clients can take advantage of that? So bad IP addresses and so on, so then that can be detected across, or is that an option that you give to the customers?
Our CERT Intel team does that. It's not it's not optional. Let's put it that way. Information sharing of threats across the customers internally is something that I'm copied on some of that, and it says it's not my daily responsibility because I focus a lot more on Microsoft tech aspects, but operationally, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conversations that occur about threats that happen across our various customers, and the comparison of those techniques or those actors to one another.
Yeah, and it maybe helps kind of paint the picture even in this layout here. So detection engineers, this is also referred to as the CERT, or the Cyber Incident Response Team. They are watching and investigating the data coming out of the engine, and they are not customer facing, right? So they are looking at, in many cases, they may be jumping into the Defender client, the portal itself, and running some KQL and doing some digging there. In many cases, our research tools and a lot of the shortcuts will use the API and run the KQL query and bring back the results, on their behalf, or even proactively. And then once that is a confirmed threat, and this is really the value for a customer, right? Is you either build something similar to this, or you go into try to capture it all in a SIM, or you try to take it all in and build things that will deal with this level of analysis, or you have to begin suppressing and dropping stuff, right? There's really no other choice, because the amount of data and the threat tactics are evolving so quickly. So it's overwhelming for a customer to do this, and so the value prop is, let us take that off your shoulders. We're doing it for thousands of customers, right? And so as we see threats, because the engine actually does what we call standardization, we're looking at threats in Windows across all the EDR partners out there, all the customers out there. We have Windows, Mac, and Linux as well, right? As Defender does now too. And so because those are standardized, we can see that threat. It may be even in a different part of the world, different customer, different EDR vendor even, but we know that Windows is being attacked in this way. And so those are one of the main reasons why we've detected things like Kaseya. We had most of our customers patched, if you will, or protected even about 30 minutes before the formal announcement went out. And that's because this last team here, these are what we call incident handlers. So they are the quarterback that gets assigned the confirmed threat and deals with them directly with the customer. And like I said, I like to call them the quarterbacks, because this is not an add-on service. This isn't something that Red Canary charges for additional consulting hours like other vendors out there. This is what you see on the screen is the full Red Canary service. And so we would be able to go to a customer and say, we saw this 5 times, earlier this week. Here are the 3 things we did to shut it down. Do those immediately. And then, as Joe mentioned, if someone was interested in the hands-on keyboard, kind of the full remediation service, that would be kind of even further to the right. Like, we do have that active remediation offering. So it's really kind of the stitching together of the whole ecosystem, right? Starting with the raw data on the left, processing it all the way through to the far right if needed.
All right. So since Brodie's taken so much of your time here, we only have about 10 minutes left before we have to hand it over to Rod for the Learn module. I want to make sure that in the last 10 minutes that we cover anything that we have not covered, and it's important for you to put out to our audience.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for the kind of the segue. So if we look at additional workloads in the Microsoft ecosystem, we have, you can see out here in the marketplace, our MDR offering continues to grow. And Jill, I'll have you maybe talk about that in just a minute for the identity, the additional pieces that we support. We also have launched the Sentinel connector. So we do have now the ability to kind of bi-directionally pull in alerts from Sentinel as well as push Red Canary alerts there. We're moving towards in August, September, October-ish, another couple months to a full managed Sentinel offering. Happy to share more about that. We don't need to go too deep there, but that's an exciting step for us as the whole MXDR ecosystem comes alive, right? The reality is we need to be able to push and pull from Sentinel and help customers through that. And then the active remediation component that I mentioned is out there and live in the marketplace as well. So those are the kind of the things that we have out there today. And then Joe, if you want to just touch on the pieces of the additional workloads that we support here, that'd be great.
Yeah. Before Joe goes, let me get a commitment. Let me get a commitment from you guys that when you launch your managed Sentinel offering that you guys come back on the show and talk about it.
Hey, love it.
Because I'm interested. You said something. I'm not going to. You don't have the answers. You said you're going to have the ability to open alerts or recognize alerts on either side. You said alerts. Do you have the capability that if you close an incident out in Red Canary, you can cut it? You can close that same incident related in Sentinel? Or
yes, that will be coming. Yeah, and I refer to it as alert, just kind of high level, but that will be part of that integration. The good news is that we do that today. So like with Defender for Endpoint, for example, in the workloads themselves, we do have a bidirectional. If you close it in Red Canary, in fact, if we were to scroll down here, you could see that we can actually close this, right? We can remediate it or mark it. And then that integration will drop this link to the URL, the threat timeline, along with the notes and everything. It'll connect it over in the Defender for Endpoint integration. So that piece is already there. And then yes, that will be coming. And we'd be happy to pull in some other guests and maybe even the product manager that's working on that as that comes more into reality.
Very cool.
Let me show the picture here as Joe talks through it. It just gives a little bit more guidance. So there we go.
Cool. So yeah, last time we were on, I think we had endpoint and identity, and as we touched on earlier with expanding since then with additional workloads, we're actually looking at Office 365 with Exchange Online now, Azure AD identity protection, and coming very, very, very soon is Defender for Cloud Apps. So I may have seen it running. I can't confirm or deny, earlier today with some of our engineers may have been doing some things, but it's looking good. And so
are there any illegal screenshots on your desktop?
Well, actually, yes. In that detection that you just had up, some of the alerts came from Cloud Apps. We just don't talk about it. But yeah, they
love it.
They did. So yeah, out of the Cordell mentioned Graph V2 is still private preview, but we are looking to support that. We are out in front of it and doing a lot of development on that end, and it really brings a more robust and stable alerting source with higher fidelity for us. There's only a couple Graph V2 things that we're not really too heavy on right now, like like app governance or DLP, but it just really has to do with the way that we're delivering security and our mission, with those being sort of secondary objectives compared to endpoint identity, and some of that Exchange Online content, like I mentioned, was in that demo that Cordell had on the screen as well. So that covered everything from malicious email. It had phishing included. It had some persistence that was included, and with creation of forwarding rules in there that we were able to detect and relay in the platform. Some and identity we pulled in through Tor logins that were phished from that user. Endpoint coming in hard with this zip file with HTML smuggling, base64 encoded HTML in there. And then, of course, Defender doing its thing when the user tries to extract that and kind of stopping the threat there. So it was a pretty cool timeline. It was fun to put together. And overall, the expanded content that we've had between now and the last time we were on the show has just made it so much more compelling to see that story unfold end to end now inside of the Red Canary platform. Our customers can be so much more informed, and our detection engineers and the CERT can be so much more informed on what's happening in customer environments. And it's only getting better with the addition of Sentinel and Cloud Apps.
Thanks, Joe. And I'll just leave you with the Red Canary is all the way back to the founding, the founding team 8 years ago. We are laser focused on security outcomes, right? And so there are many other tools, many other vendors, many other partners out there, and that have a different outcome or a different focus, right? So for us, you could be building awesome looking reports. That we do have those. That's not the laser focus, right? You could be building the massive data lake that pulls in sources from any and all. That can be done. We pull in a lot of data. We focus on data that creates outcomes, right? We have a team that actually evaluates the efficiency and the output of data of a certain data set. And if it's not high enough, if it doesn't give us enough fidelity, we don't just flip on the switch just to have more data, right? And so when we talk about a security outcome, those are the three boxes you see in the bottom right? We need to be actively showing our value to customers by stopping the bad stuff from happening. So that's our focus, and customers love us because of it, and so do the Microsoft teams we work with. So it's been a great ride, and looking forward to more. Thanks, guys.
Oh yeah. So I do have one more request, and
all right.
So when we you and Joe and I have a relationship previous to getting on this, we know why I'm going to put it out here. One of the things I asked for as a consolation prize was an NFR to throw in our lab. Can we start?
I tried. I've been trying.
Okay.
That's a no.
Okay.
Not for resale. You have to realize that it's not like packaged software. They're actually, all your stuff is now going to be sent through their entire process.
You're right.
Not for resale.
You're saying I don't have interesting stuff?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying that it's not like a piece of software you just installed there. They would actually have to constantly do work on it.
Right, Frank, you're right. It's actually the other way around, Edward. If you're not careful, our detection engineers or detection analysts will actually be giving you a call, trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And I ran into the same thing when I first connected my machine into the demo environment. I ran Atomic Red Team and I blew stuff up, and all of a sudden my machine's isolated, and it takes me 3 days to get back connected to the network and all this. So when you run your data through, it's live. We don't have a kind of a fake system on the side. You're actually showing your raw data to the real people. So
I found out here early on that corporate security doesn't mess around either. They will isolate you and ask questions later. And I got a slap on the wrist.
That's
a great first year here. Haven't done it since.
If by some reason I did get on board, the only people you're going to see doing stuff they're not supposed to is Franklin. and the number you would be calling would be his cell phone number that I would put in there. So ring away.
Now that's interesting. We could maybe do that.
Yeah, you get that. So
right,
okay.
Do we have a teacher for one of our listeners? Not that we actually give out things, nobody's gotten their game yet, but that's okay.
Well, we still have to figure out how we're going to do that. I have them sitting here. Yeah, absolutely. We have to figure out how we're going to do that. Hey, right. we do have to kind of
we got 3 minutes. So.
Share our learn path for the week. Hey, Elixir, if you could go ahead and share my screen. All right, there it is. So I'm going to get to this in just a second. I want a couple little housekeeping items. Number one, Peter M. early on asked, we were talking about Sentinel and why it was not covered at that event. Peter actually said he'd never heard of Sentinel. And that's interesting because the sessions that I did last week at Tech Mentor in Redmond, I asked the question, why did you at the beginning, why did you attend this session? And a lot of people were like, man, I think the Sentinel name is really cool. So that was the reason why they came. So I was able to talk to them about that stuff. So, and he asked, he's kind of a smaller team supporting a smaller organization, and asked if something like Sentinel is something that he can use. Absolutely. So best example I did a workshop for the state of Bahamas. There's one individual that manages IT operations and security for the state of Bahamas. He uses Azure Sentinel to this day because of the automation that we have built into Microsoft Sentinel. So yeah, anyone can use it. It's made for small orgs, medium orgs, large orgs. Anyone can use it. Frank, I just want to show you something real quick. I did get Sysmon to work, by the way, for the AMA, right? So I was distracted. Azure Monitor Agent, there's Sysmon. I'm pulling in Event 5. We'll talk about that later. The last thing, and what I want to finish up with, part of our opportunity to be on Reactor once a month is also ensuring that folks know where to go to get some additional information. And we have at Microsoft some really awesome resources. We have what's called Microsoft Learn. And this is one of the things that's actually new and updated this week. We've talked about Sentinel and how to pull in information and how to look at that information, determine if there might be some security flaws or situations or issues within our environment. This is not a new Learn module, but if you look down through here, you can see these little check marks. I actually have gone through this before. And a lot of times what we do at Microsoft is we provide additional paths and additional information, additional things that you can go through to learn. And so sometimes you kind of have to be on your toes to figure out what's new. This one is specifically how to monitor and report on security events in Azure Active Directory, right? So we do this through Sentinel for you automatically. We use the intelligence. We look through these Azure Active Directory logs, the login events, the audit events, and things like that. And we're going to produce that information for you. But there's also, you can do this. If you want to do this manually, you absolutely can. And this Learn path is going to walk you through how to do that. The one biggest reason why I pulled this one out, I thought this was interesting because it takes you all the way through this, and it's going to introduce you to KQL and using KQL against the Azure sign-in logs and audit logs for Azure Active Directory. So you get some experience with KQL, but also get experience with what security events look like within Azure Active Directory. And that's it for me.
I'm actually going to go through this. It looks good. Let me check that out. I didn't know it. Good stuff. Well, everyone, this has been our show for August 17th, 2022. Once again, thanks to Microsoft Reactor team for having us and allowing us to present, as well as allow us to showcase some guests of the show and definitely great security practitioners. Until the same time next week on our regular podcast.
And
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
just jumping in here to remind everyone that we will be back with the Reactor on September 21st, as on the screen. And if you have, there you go. If you have a few more seconds, feel free to fill out our survey and provide some feedback. If you have some comments about today's or upcoming sessions, always greatly appreciated. And finally, feel free to join our community. We're on YouTube. I shared the link to our channel earlier in the chat. You were on Meetup to sign up for further sessions, and Twitter. And yeah, thank you all so much. Great. Back in September. Have a great one.
Thank you.
So for those who